All right, happy Friday, everybody. So this week on the whiteboard, I want to talk about a topic that's gotten some attention recently. A/B testing and big picture testing. So this is something that's always a debate on Twitter. Recently we heard that booking.com has managed to dramatically improve their conversion rate and revenue with using some more A/B testing, among other things. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how we think about it, how I think about it, and what the right balance is. So to break this down, our overarching philosophy has been 10% or 10x. And that boils down to this. We want every test that we run to have one of two goals. Either it's trying to get 10% better at something, or it's trying to get 10 times better at something. Because what we found is that anything in the middle is just bad. You lose both. So you can either get something that's a little bit better, incremental progress, or something dramatically better, revolutionary progress, but trying to blend the two tends to go poorly. And let me explain how that happens and what you can do about it. Right, so if we take the basic example, the thing that most CRO, A/B testing, softwares, agencies, all that nonsense sells, it's this. Fundamentally, we take your website and we make a change, A and B. And we observe the behavior on this A, your default, your control, and B, your experimental arm. And this is how Google Experiments works. This is how testing on Facebook works. This is how testing with like A/B Tasty or any of those other platforms works. And what you observe is that over a certain period of time, once you get statistical significance, you see a lift potentially in one of these. For instance, here, version B has a 26% lift. Maybe that's in conversions, maybe that's in conversion value, doesn't matter. Point being, we hold everything else constant, we change one variable, we measure the impact of that change. And then we stack these gains over time. That's the concept, right? So test one here gets you a 26% gain. But then we run another test on the winner, and maybe we get a 5% gain. Then we run another test on the winner of these, and we get a 13% gain off of that. And then maybe we run one that has no difference, right? So what you end up, the theory is that you should end up with a multiplicative gain, right? You have compounding. 1.26 times 1.05 times 1.13 times 1.00 equals 1.495, a 49.5% gain after running 4 tests. So your conversion rate in this case might go from 2% to 3%. The number of sales you get goes from, call it 1,000 to 1,500. That's the idea. But there's a couple problems with this. And this is where I think you have to be careful. If you can get this, that's amazing. But the reality is that almost every A/B test that you graph, if you graph it over time, the results look like this. Here, when you first run the test, the initial gain's high. The novelty is high. It works better. But then over time, people get used to seeing it. And you end the test right about here, right? This is where the test ends. You just want to mark it right here. This is where the winner is determined, right here. Well, after that, look, you have a regression to the mean even further. And pretty soon, what was once a tremendous gain, right, plus 49%, is now plus 10%. That's not good. I mean, it's not bad, but it's not as good as you thought it was. It's problem number one. And problem number two, this is the climbing up the mountain problem. And the way it goes is something like this. If you chart every possible variant, right, of a certain page, obviously there's infinite variance, but the law of large numbers does apply. And you charted their performance, what you're going to find is that the vast majority are going to approach average performance. And as you go, and as you get better and better, as you get further and further and further away from the average, the probability that the next test decreases performance increases. Right? It's incredibly counterintuitive. But if you think about it, the number of options, if you just look at this chart, right? If this is your current starting point, all of these options here are available to you, right? You've got all of that space to explore. You have a good possibility of improving your performance. But now, when I go and I've made an improvement and I've gotten this page working better or this ad working better and I get to here, well, now I'm only left with this space. It's a fraction the size of my initial space, right? Which means more likely than not, the next test I run will not beat this variant. So I'm going to spend money suboptimally to learn that it's hard to win. I have to run more and more tests to get fewer and fewer results. And when you think about that logically, it does make a lot of sense, because what A/B testing does is it gets you to the top of the mountain that you are currently on. So if you are at the bottom of the mountain, pretty much any step is going to get you closer to the top. If you are near the summit, almost any step is going to get you closer to the bottom. What it doesn't do is say, hey, am I on the top of the tallest mountain here? If I'm here, I'm as high as I'm going to get on this mountain. In order to get to the top of the mountain range, and to get to the top of where my organization can be, I have to do the counterintuitive thing. I have to leave this mountain and I have to go to another mountain and climb higher. That's where 10x testing comes in, right? So when we think about this, right, when you start to cap out, you start to get to this point where A/B testing is not doing anything for you, you have to balance it with 10x testing. This is where you say, you know what? Whereas right here, I kept one variable changed and everything else the same. Here, I'm changing everything. New header, new quotes, new page structure, new layout, new offer, new everything. Is it scientific? No, not even close. But what this does is it gives me a chance to test something radically different, to see if jumping to another mountain gets me closer to my goal of being on the top. So as you think about this and you try to think, well, what's the right balance? Well, the way I think about this is the closer you are to startup or non-dominant brand, the more you want to be taking big swings. The closer you are to being the 800-pound gorilla in the room, the more you will benefit from 10% testing, with the caveat that even the 800-pound gorilla should have a portion of what they're doing dedicated to this 10x testing. And if you need proof that organizations do this, and high-performing organizations do this, look at Google, right? They have their other bets. They disclose it publicly. And the entire stated purpose is to develop the next Google, right? They are not looking for an incremental improvement on their product. They're looking to revolutionize different areas where they can build another dominant business. And maybe it's only 5 or 10% of their total revenue or their total budget, but they're doing it. So whatever strategy you have, you should have one bracket for, hey, we think we're on the right track and we can get better. We're going to aim to get 10% better with every test that we set. The second bucket should be 10x. We are going to take radical big swings. We are going to change everything. We are going to reimagine how we go to market. And we're going to do that because we think that by doing it, we unlock new levels of growth that aren't possible on the mountain we are currently on. And again, the balancing there is tricky. It's not perfect. There's no perfect rule to it. But every organization should have a mix of both, and every test should be clear on which one you're trying to achieve. So with that, have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you next week.